For more analysis now, we're joined by Robert Glasgow. He is a partner at McCarthy Tetrault with an expertise on international trade. So good to have you on the show, Robert. Thank you for making time.
Great to be here, Natasha.
So, Robert, from a legal standpoint, these deadlines get put out July 21st, then August 1st, and then they go by and nothing really happens. So when you're speaking to clients about the situation we're in with the tariff and trade war with the United States, what are you telling them? What is the reality here?
So a big part of this is the natural chaos that seems to swirl around every Trump administration. And a lot of it's kind of just trying to do what forecasting you have with what tools we have available. And thus far, we've seen that the U.S. has been fairly stable in at least one element of the trade deals, which is this 0% rate for CUSMA compliant goods. And this is one of the reasons why the U.S. ambassador to Canada said that he didn't believe that they were in breach of CUSMA because they allowed for this exemption for the CUSMA goods. So I think that that's kind of forming something of a cornerstone of where things are. And at least that's the one area of certainty. Now, that doesn't mean everything's good. You have the tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and now copper, which are not these kind of fentanyl or IEEPA tariffs that your previous guest was discussing. But you do have at least that level of certainty for those goods going forward for as far as we can foresee. Because, again, when you're dealing with Donald Trump, you can't foresee everything.
But Robert, to help me understand this, because part of at least my confusion in the storyline is that, yes, CUSMA compliant goods will not be subject to these 35% tariffs. However, in the original negotiation of CUSMA, steel and aluminum and auto sector would have been covered under CUSMA. So why are they getting tariffed at very high rates? So
there's two different processes and statutes that the U.S. uses. There's IEEPA, which covers temporary emergencies, and it's the president's emergency powers, which is why it's queued off of fentanyl, because he's declared fentanyl to be a national emergency in the U.S., and that's what's giving him the power, allegedly, to use these tariffs. It's worth noting those are currently under challenge. They were actually found to be unlawful by the Court of International Trade in the United States. And they recently had their hearing at the Federal Circuit Court, where most analysts, including myself, think that they got taken to the woodshed, the government, and that there's a lot of expectation that the Federal Circuit Court will also find them to be unlawful. And that's ultimately going to be ending up in the Supreme Court. Steel, aluminum, and autos are done under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act in 1972. That is for national security reasons that they've established these tariffs. One element of that is that there has to be a lot more congressional oversight, and there's a lot more kind of investigation that happens, and there's a lot less ability of the president to just kind of snap his fingers and change the tariff rate like he can under IEEPA. And so that's why he can't use them. But that's why they're a separate regime. It's a completely separate statute and tariff power the president is using.
And as you've laid out, Robert, the president and his administration are on shaky legal ground. And if this does go all the way to the Supreme Court, and he is found to be in breach of the law of the CUSMA agreement, then what is the punitive action? Does the president or this administration face any real consequences?
So it's worth noting the challenge here isn't actually that the law breaches CUSMA. It's that the president's authority under IEEPA does not extend to making tariffs.
Okay.
He's allowed to take certain other steps, such as doing a trade embargo, but he can't tariff goods. And if it ultimately is found to be unlawful, then the fentanyl tariffs would go away entirely, as would the kind of the so-called Liberation Day tariffs that were blanket tariffs on every other country. Those would also go away. Now, the real interesting question is what would happen to all the money the government's collected, not just from a legal perspective, because legally they would be obligated to return it. The bigger question is practically, how would they? Because you saw the U.S. bragging about hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff revenue that they've been bringing in. Are they just going to distribute that? That's going to leave a giant hole in the budget that they've been celebrating with the budget surplus in June. And that's just going to potentially be fiscal chaos.
So in the meantime, what options, legally speaking, does Canada have as they want to move forward with collegial, respectful negotiations, not antagonize the president, but also challenge him?
So I think the steps Canada is taking, as reflected by the comments by Minister LeBlanc at the top of the hour, is to continue negotiating. I think the current system of the 35% and 0% is one that both sides, while not liking, can find at least somewhat palatable, because Donald Trump can hold it up and say, I've put higher tariffs on Canada because they're not cooperating and they're being very nasty people. And Mark Carney in Canada can hold up and say, look, for most of the goods that are kind of made in Canada from a CUSMA perspective and can provide proof that they've been made in Canada under CUSMA guidelines, that's going in duty-free. The biggest issue is going to be autos, steel, and aluminum. And that's where we're going to see the biggest fights. And Canada has enacted retaliatory tariffs on those areas. But in a number of these, especially in the aluminum field, the U.S. is just going to have to keep importing it, and the U.S. importers are going to have to keep eating the tariff duty rate because there's no real alternative for Canadian aluminum in the U.S. market.
Robert Glasgow, really great to get your expertise today. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure.